What's up, Buckeye Nation? Floco here for Ohio State Football with Scarlet and Great right here on YouTube. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Going to talk about the injury situation a little bit this week. A little bit, couple interesting things from this past week against Michigan State that I want to go over and talk about. 11 players were held out against Michigan State, right? Including Miyan Williams. That was the one that was surprising to everybody. I remember in my group chat, everybody was, "Where's Miyan Williams? Why isn't Miyan Williams going to play?" Well, apparently he had a knee injury. You all know about that by now, I'm sure. He was seen in a knee brace, I guess, by Wednesday, and just did. Even though he practiced, they just decided to hold him out. And I don't know, and it's just kind of interesting. The week after he has a career week, all of a sudden he has a little bit of an injury going into the next week, and I just wonder if we'll get into this a little bit later. I just wonder if he's starting to become a little bit too valuable to put against teams we know we're going to beat, because of the fact that it's just, you don't want to mess with knee injuries, hamstrings, things like that. Obviously, as we're seeing with Jaxon, but I want to know something. I want you to comment to me if you're buying the Williams injury. I had a little bit of a theory on this. I've talked to a couple people on it. I've scoured the internet a little bit for more information on it, but um, maybe I'm missing something. Comment below if I'm missing something, but also comment below if you're buying it. I'll tell you what, I'm wondering if his running style is starting to, because he's a bruiser as a running back, right? I'm wondering if that running style is actually contributing to the idea that they want to keep him fresh for the rest of the season, and we didn't find Michigan State to be as much of a threat. I mean, and you might say, well, that's ridiculous because they played Trev Henderson. We'll get to Trev Henderson here in a second. He did return, but um, I'm just curious about it because it's just I don't know. It's just, I mean, even Johnny and I were talking privately. Like, it's just Ryan Day just like just hold people out to keep them fresh, just to keep people fresh. I mean, this came out of nowhere. Okay, so maybe he did tweak his knee in practice. Maybe it's all legitimate, but then again, you can't ever trust Coach Speak. I don't know what my voice is failing me now. Um. Anyways, guys, I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't want to say anybody's lying about it or misleading. Maybe he did tweak his knee a little bit. Maybe he could have played if it were a bigger week, like if it was the team up north or whatever, or Penn State. He'd probably be playing. I kind of wonder if since we're coming up on the bye week, is a team we figure we could beat anyway in Michigan State because they've been pretty bad this year. And if you listen to all the commentators like Joel Klatt, they going into that game, they really had no qualms about saying we were going to win that game pretty easy. So anyway, I don't know. I'm just saying. You can go ahead and comment and tell me what you think. But I'm kind of leaning towards they just said forget it, just hold him out, don't even risk it. Even though it's a little tweak here, he could be fine. His running style, you don't want him pounding his head against the opponent week after week after week with 20 carries. You can't do that anymore in today's game. That's why I actually kind of disagree with Johnny a little bit when he says, I want one guy carrying the load. That's just not how I don't agree with that style anymore. I think you have to have a split. You have to have two, even three effective running backs these days. That's why I think running backs are almost a dime a dozen in the draft, is because the fact that the longevity is just not there. You can say, well, for this year, it should be fine. Well, yeah, but his running style is extremely. He's just a bruiser. I mean, he's quick, he's shifty, he can juke you, he can make you miss. And Williams has that talent, but at the same time, he's lowering his head, he's pounding people, and you don't really do you really want to get that wear and tear towards the end of the season when come November and we have to beat the team up north, obviously because it's a rivalry, but also to get into the Big Ten title game to try to get to the playoff. Uh, if we have other options that are very good and easily good enough to beat Michigan State, why not just kind of let Williams rest a little bit, right? And you might talk about, well, what about rhythm? What about let Williams rest, also split carries? Well, what about rhythm? What about getting stronger as the game goes on? I think there's games you can make that decision within the game, but you don't want to do that game after game after game after game nowadays. I mean, we've seen the hard tails of guys like Larry Johnson in the NFL who you rush him 400 times and all of a sudden he just capers off quickly. So anyways, but I do think the bye week's coming at the right time because we had the notables we had held out, obviously, for the 11 players that were out were Jaxon, Smith-Njigba, um and Miyan Williams, obviously, but we're also banged up in other areas. Even guys that came back were a little bit banged up in some areas. But hit that like button if you think the bye week's coming at the right time. I can't think of a better time other than like the week before the team up north. That'd be a nice time to have the bye week. But um, getting it mid-season is pretty good. 6 games in, you get your bye weeks, pretty good. I mean, there's been times you get your bye, like, you just it's like within 2-3 games. I remember there's been, maybe I'm old enough to remember those years where I was like, man, we're getting the bye week already. That seems pretty early. So I like the fact it's on like it's midway through the season. I do think that's a good thing for Ohio State right now to get healthy going into the backstretch of that season, because that backstretch is going to be much more difficult than it has been thus far to date. But then we got Iowa the week after, and Williams is set to be back. But now here's another question: is Jaxon Smith-Njigba going to come back? Do you bring him back against Iowa? Do you need him back against Iowa? I would argue you do, for the sake of reps and for the sake of building that chemistry back and getting him back in game shape uh, to go into Penn State the next week. That would be my concern. Not necessarily that, maybe chemistry is a little bit. I don't think his chemistry with CJ Stroud will be off, but I do think that the fact is that the irony of the Jaxon Smith-Njigba injury is actually kind of been a blessing in disguise to Ohio State to some degree. You never want to see a guy get hurt. Obviously, you don't want to. You don't. He's one of your best players. He's probably a first round draft pick, and you're probably you're laughing at me right now. Well, of course he's a first round draft pick. Yeah, I agree he's first round draft pick, but also if the NFL teams have never seen him as a number one for Ohio State. I'm starting to wonder if he slips a little bit if he doesn't come back. I mean, people are laughing at me right now. I know. Go ahead and comment. You're laughing at me. But again, they've never seen him as a number one for Ohio State, except for one game against a team with a depleted secondary. And he hasn't been able to stay healthy this year. So I think the incentive is for him to come back as soon as possible. But do you want to waste his talents against teams we're going to beat? Especially when we got the Penn State looming and we got obviously the team up north coming up. Do you want to risk injury against teams you really don't need him against? Well, I maintain get him back against Iowa, get him in the game. You don't maybe have him on a pitch count, get his feet wet again, and get him back in game shape as we go to Happy Valley the week after, because that obviously will be a tough game. But and a lot of people have speculated maybe he'll just sit out the season. I maintain he really, really, for his own benefit, needs to come back and play this season, because again, we haven't. The NFL teams don't have the film on him as a number one guy. And do you want to invest? I mean, I think about it from a pro team standpoint. Now, pro teams do stupid things in drafts all the time, but not to say drafting JSN would be stupid, but it's your top 10, top 15 pick, and you need a wide receiver for your young quarterback or whatever. Like say you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, say you're the Chicago Bears, and you say you finally decide to build around Justin Fields a little bit. Like, do you have your franchise receiver be a guy that the only film you have him as a number one is beating up on Utah, and you say to yourself, well, yeah, it was a great game. He had amazing. It was ridiculous what he did. Yeah, it is ridiculous what he did. We all know he's ridiculously talented, but now we try to see him as a number one, and he gets hurt first game, and he's been out pretty much the rest of the season. Do you invest millions and millions of dollars into that and try to build your offense, or use him as a tool to build your offense? That's going to be a question for NFL teams. Now, granted, maybe I'm just totally off base and wrong here. Comment again if I'm off base and wrong. That's fine. I don't care. It's just an opinion. I think it behooves him to come back and put up some numbers before the season is over. But I mean, the blessing in disguise is it helped build chemistry with Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka between CJ Stroud. The passing game's hitting on all cylinders right now. Harrison and Egbuka both are just having blowout games. So I think it'll benefit them once they get to full strength, and we'll see what happens when that happens. But I thought it was interesting also that Jordan Hancock was full go at practice apparently, but he was held out, and they say they're trying to be smart with him, and I get that. But again, secondary has been kind of a problem this year. I mean, Denzel Burke's been a liability. He wasn't this game, but he's been a liability for most of the season. So maybe, I don't know how to gauge it against Michigan State's offense, but maybe he's starting to step up and play a little better and finally start to figure out where he was going wrong in our defense. But yeah, I thought Jordan Hancock being held out was interesting. But again, maybe you're trying to. That's what you ask yourself. You're just trying to save players for the upcoming schedule, and that's an interesting take in my opinion. It's like did Ryan Day is not even. I'm not going to go as far as say he didn't respect Michigan State enough to, play Miyan Williams, play Jordan Hancock. I mean, Hancock is not a fixture in winning games right now. He will be, and he's a fixture for the future, obviously. But you do want to get a young guy like that, a talented young guy like that, more reps. But he's been out for a little while now too. But you have to wonder yourself, his secondary being a little depleted, wouldn't you want all hands on deck? But maybe not against Michigan State. Miyan Williams, obviously he's your second best offensive player right now behind C.J. Stroud. Do you really need him against Michigan State? He tweaked his knee a little bit. He has a hard running style. Maybe just this week we don't play with fire on that one. Because we got Iowa, it's gonna be a physical game. Now Iowa's not a great team, but they're a very physical team. They always are. And then of course you got Penn State, and you got to get by. You have to get by Happy Valley if you have any hopes for the playoffs or the Big Ten title. So maybe it's like, okay, well, in a couple weeks we're really going to need these guys. So also another interesting thing was Cam Brown's back, Trev Henderson were back. Henderson has a little bit of a ankle or foot problem right now. He did have to leave the game for an injury, so it kind of, I also wonder if they're pushing the Trev Henderson issue because of the fact that Miyan Williams has become such a star for Ohio State. And there's been, I wouldn't say there's rumors around Trev Henderson. Of course, people are trying to start rumors around him. But even Shane, and God bless Shane here at Ohio State Football, Scarlet Great, is even asking the question, where does Trev go from here now that Miyan's kind of solidifying himself as RB1? And I don't think Trev is the kind of guy to, pout and just walk off and take his ball and go home. He's not that kind of guy. But I just wonder if this is a way, like Kevin Wilson talked about with Kirk Herbstreit, of keeping everybody engaged. Say, okay, Trev, now it's your show this week. And he had a good game. He had a really good game. And then he had to leave for an injury. And it's just, okay, now that's another aspect where the bye week's coming at the right time. Get both of our running backs healthy to be at full strength going into the second half of the season. Cam Brown also came back. Maybe that's another reason why you could hold Hancock out. But he did not have a great game. A couple pass interference penalties, a horse collar. He just look, I love Cam Brown. I think he's a great player. It was interesting to see that where it was his bad game instead of Denzel Burke's bad game. But it was, he came back from injury. And again, this is where the bye week comes at the right time, where he can get right before we go into that second half of the season. But it was good to see him back out there, because you're gonna need to be at full strength as much as possible going to the second half. And Cam Brown, despite a bad game, is one of their best players on defense, and he is probably their best corner, if we're being real. This guy's. I would argue Cam Brown's the most consistent corner overall on that team. We thought it would be Denzel Burke, but he's had enough kind of subpar games to where maybe he's not right now. Maybe Denzel's got some growing to do. So anyway, guys, it'll be interesting to see what we do going forward. I'm glad that the bye week's happening in week 6. I'm glad that we can get healthy for the back stretch there, and I'm glad to especially get healthy right before we take on Penn State. I mean, I don't want to overlook Iowa, because we've done that in the past and it hasn't been good for us. But I don't see this Iowa team scoring 55 on us. Just a hunch. Jim Knowles is just a little bit better than Greg Schiano in this arena, and he has a lot more to prove right now with Ohio State. So, anyway, guys, we appreciate you for tuning in as always, and just enjoy the bye week. You don't have, I don't like bye weeks either as a fan, because you don't get to watch your team, but know that it's better for Ohio State long term as you're just sitting taking in all of college football here on this coming up Saturday. And hopefully the team up north will get embarrassed. So they've been struggling. Anyway, appreciate you guys. Heck, I don't even know if they're playing, to be honest with you. I haven't looked it up. So maybe this will be their best week to not struggle with an opponent for once. Anyway, guys, appreciate you guys as always. Goodbye. God bless. And go Bucks.